Indeed, those days were a nightmare. Both of us had a tough time, being bullied by those brats every day. But well, we eventually made it through, and among those classmates, both of us are doing quite well. You, of course, are a scientist at an American company, making what I earn in 10 or 20 years in just 1 year. As for me, well, I'm doing okay. The man chuckled and nodded, continuing to reminisce. There was this one time on our way home from school when we ran into that thug known as Tractor, who was demanding protection money. Right, we didn't have any spare change on us, and that beast caught us, threatening to beat us up. Do you remember what I shouted then? Xander Sue burst into laughter. You yelled, "Run." And I really did run off by myself, leaving you behind. Only later did I find out you took quite a beating for me. But a few years ago, Tractor was arrested by the local police station for causing trouble. It wasn't really my business, but when I heard he was caught, I quickly asked someone to send a message to our brothers there, and in the end, he was sentenced to 6 years. I even contacted a friend who was a prison guard to make sure he was well taken care of. Haha, it was like serving justice in a roundabout way, avenging us for what happened back then. The man smirked, pointing at him. So, do you admit you owe me for taking those hits for you? Xander Sue was taken aback, sensing something amiss, and his smile faded. What are you trying to say? The man replied casually, nothing much. You work at the prosecutor's office, and when it comes to prosecuting major criminal cases, the police have to hand over all sorts of evidence to you first. I know you're very familiar with the police's procedures, so I wanted to ask you something. Xander Sue asked warily. What? The man said, I brought back a mobile phone signal jammer this time I returned to the country. It disperses the signals sent by the phone instead of directing them to the nearest base station, making it impossible for the mobile company to pinpoint my phone's exact location. Do you know about this? Xander Sue narrowed his eyes. I know, many scam callers use this. The man continued, when I bought it, that American told me it's high-tech, the latest version of the product. He even joked that terrorists use it to communicate. But honestly, I don't know how effective it really is. If I use this device to make calls, can the police track my location? Xander Sue's suspicion intensified. He lowered his voice and demanded, What exactly are you planning to do? The man just laughed it off. Actually, I don't want to hide it from you. They're doomed. Xander Sue was shocked, and after a moment, he asked in astonishment, What did you say? The man repeated nonchalantly, They're doomed. Xander Sue coughed lightly. Who? Who are you talking about? The people we met this afternoon. What do you want to do? I'm planning to kill them. The man seemed to have no reverence for the word kill, but Xander Sue knew that this man, who had never been in a real fight from childhood to adulthood, was thinking of murder. Xander Sue shivered. You're not joking, right? I was worried that you couldn't handle knowing about Jasmine Gaunt's family situation, that you might do something foolish. You told me online that you've been feeling unwell lately because of working in chemistry for so many years. I was afraid it would get worse. How could you think of doing such a thing? Clearly, the man's reaction was far beyond his expectations. He had only been worried that his old friend would be too heartbroken or would torment himself, especially since his health was already poor. He never imagined he would think of killing those people. The man said, I had already made up my mind before returning to the country. Seeing what happened this afternoon only strengthened my resolve. Have you lost your mind? What about your parents if you get executed? They're living with my brother in Australia. It's fine. You've never killed anyone. How could you become so twisted? I'm not twisted. They forced me. How are you going to kill? Do you think you can just kill someone if you want to? The man showed a relaxed expression. You forgot what I studied. Okay, I know you're a PhD in chemical engineering. Explosives are your specialty. You want to be like Jasmine Gaunt, don't you? The man shook his head seriously. She was too impulsive. Was it worth it? If she had told me earlier, I would have helped her kill them cleanly, without leaving any clues. My God. Xander Sue felt his blood rush to his head, feeling dizzy. Who do you think you are? If you really do something foolish, do you think the police won't catch you? The man scoffed. As long as I don't want to be caught, they'll never catch me. Honestly, I don't understand criminal investigation, but no matter how sophisticated the criminal investigation techniques are, they can't escape the logic. Now it's like an exam. The only difference from our student days is that I'm the teacher setting the questions, and they are the students answering them. And this teacher is preparing an unsolvable proof question. As the man described his plan in a relaxed tone, Xander Sue's face turned completely somber. After a long while, he said, "It's been 10 years. I didn't expect your thoughts to become so twisted. I suggest you see a psychiatrist." Right after he finished speaking, the man's hand suddenly started shaking violently, foam appeared at the corners of his mouth, and he immediately vomited, including the noodles he had eaten earlier, all over the table. "What's wrong with you?" Xander Su hadn't reacted to the sudden situation yet. The man reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a bottle of pills, shakily opened it, took out 2 pills, put them in his mouth, and swallowed them with a gulp of water from the cup on the table. After a few minutes, he finally stabilized and smiled faintly. "Sorry, I made a mess. Waiter, come clean this up." Afterward, Xander Su asked, "Chaechin, what serious illness do you have?" The man named Chaechin shook his head, casually saying, "A minor illness." Xander Su snatched the pill bottle from his hand, looked around it, and said, "English? Seems like autonomic dysfunction?" "Yeah, haha. Looks like you haven't completely lost your English skills." Xander Su said seriously, "I think it's mostly psychological, because of Jasmine Gan's situation, right?" The doctor said so too, or it could also be the result of inhaling too many toxic substances from years of working in chemical engineering. He had an indifferent expression on his face. Xander Su solemnly said, "I suggest you still go to a psychiatric hospital for a checkup." He took out a business card. "This doctor is the director of the city psychiatric hospital, also my friend, an expert, very hard to get an appointment with. If you need it, I'll call him later and arrange it for you." Chaechin accepted the business card, nodded, and smiled. "Thank you. I really should make a visit. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if I suddenly fell during my actions." Xander Su cursed in pain. "Are you beyond saving?" Chaechin just shook his head, smiling. "People are already dead. What else do you want?" To fulfill her unfulfilled wishes. She died along with those bastards. What wishes could she possibly have left? How do you know she had any wishes after her death? Chaechin analyzed calmly. She had at least 2 wishes. First, she didn't want her son to live a life of constant fear and bullying. She didn't want her son's life to be ruined. Xander Su interrupted. "That son is He Jian's, not yours and Jasmine Gan's. Why are you getting involved?" Chaechin chuckled. "After all, he's her bloodline." "And the second?" "The instigators are still alive. The 3 who were blown up," I inquired, "were just pawns." You really are." Xander Su fell silent for a long while, then coldly said, "If you really think that way, let's end our friendship." Chaechin pursed his lips and looked up with a smile. "All right then." Xander Su said expressionlessly, "Don't think you can rely on our years of friendship. If you commit a crime, I will be the first to report you." Chaechin smiled and said, "Are you afraid that if I get caught, I'll confess that you knew about it?" "You." Xander Su's expression was complex. Chaechin said, "Don't worry. If I get caught, I'll definitely face the death penalty. Why would I drag you, my friend, into this?" "You. Do you think it's just as simple as the death penalty? Do you think you won't suffer before you die? You have no idea how terrifying the things they do are. You're talking about torture, aren't you? Even if they really catch me, they wouldn't dare, and they won't torture me. I've made double insurance preparations." "You. What do you mean by that?" Chaechin smiled and said, "Nothing else. You have your stance, and I understand. I have my own issues, and they can't be changed." Xander Su sat silently for a long time, and finally, he sighed tiredly. "I'm asking you one last time. Were you joking just now, or were you serious?" Chaechin smiled calmly. "Serious." Xander Su slowly stood up, straightened his body on the spot, took a deep breath, and said coldly, "Fine. From now on, we are strangers to each other. I didn't hear anything you said tonight." After saying this, Xander Su's gaze had already become very unfamiliar. Chaechin nodded and smiled, but said nothing. Xander Su pursed his lips tightly, took out his wallet, quickly called over the waiter to pay the bill, and then stood up and walked away. However, after walking a few steps, he stopped, stood in place for a long time, and said coldly with his back turned, "Don't think American goods are something special. As long as they lock onto your phone number, they can definitely find out in more than 5 minutes. It's best not to exceed 2 minutes. Changing a SIM card for every call won't be a financial burden for you." After he said this, he regretted it a bit. Once he told Chaechin this, he became an accomplice in a practical sense, for merely being someone with knowledge of the situation. Was he also going to fall into this mire? He gritted his teeth and walked out with big steps. Chastchen sat in his seat, gave a bitter smile, and only when Xander Su's figure had left his sight did he whisper, "Thank you." He didn't blame him. With different identities, naturally, they stood on different grounds. From this moment on, he no longer had this friend. From this moment on, he was alone, facing a vast machine. From this moment on, he had to use his own wisdom and technology to prove to them that even if the sky is overcast, one's own strength can also pierce through the darkness. After meticulous and rigorous analysis and self-argumentation, Chastchen believed that to complete the entire murder plan, extremely thorough preparation work was needed, and, ideally, an assistant would be best. Although he could complete the entire plan alone, obviously, such an outcome would not be perfect. An assistant was necessary, a hidden shadow murderer, to help him complete the entire case. Luckily, not long after that day, he finally found that assistant, an unexpectedly good friend. This friend would become the most critical partner in his entire murder plan. This friend was the person he valued the most, an assistant he never thought would exist beforehand. With the help of this friend, everything went smoothly and flawlessly. It was almost as if it was like committing a crime with God's help. After a long period of preparation, the first case was almost ready to be executed. A month and a half later, after night self-study, Jiang Xiaobing was the only son of the former deputy director of the police station, River, the same one who, under his mother's instigation, kicked Jasmine Gan's son. That kick, although landed on Jasmine Gan's son, essentially sealed his own fate. If there really was a book of life and death, Jiang Xiaobing's name could soon be crossed out. You can offend a Sonda champion because, at most, he'll beat you up. But you should never offend a chemical engineering PhD who can easily think of hundreds of ways to kill you. Many people always feel that mathematics, physics, and chemistry have nothing to do with life, but Chastchen certainly didn't think so. Knowledge is combat power. This saying by a great person is reliable. All crimes cannot escape logic. Police solving cases cannot do so out of thin air. To commit a crime successfully, first, you need to create an impeccable logic of crime. Jiang Xiaobing was very arrogant, probably inheriting his father's wild nature. Everyone in the school was afraid of him. In just the second year of junior high, he dared to collect protection fees from high school students. Junior and senior high school is precisely the rebellious period for boys, and there are many delinquents both inside and outside the school. He was indeed the boss among them, and many young people from society also called him Big Brother. Because by making friends with this Big Brother, getting into fights and brawls, it was very easy to get out, and they wouldn't be beaten by the police. Before the evening self-study ended, he and a few classmates sneaked out and came to the school's exterior, lighting up a cigarette and smoking it without any restraint. But what he didn't know was that in the darkness, a pair of eyes had already set their sights on him. These eyes seemed very tired at first glance, but they lit up upon seeing Jiang Xiaobing. "Don't let me catch you alone," Chastchen sneered in his heart. He had been watching this kid for several days, and the kid always walked with a group of people, making it difficult to act. It's not that he couldn't take the kid's life while he was with a group of people. He had a way to take down the 4 delinquent students opposite him in 2 minutes. The reason he didn't do so was not that he was kind-hearted and didn't want to harm the innocent. Perhaps he was kind-hearted in the past, but now, for the sake of the whole plan, he didn't care about having a few more lives on his hands. The reason he didn't do so was only because he wanted to make the first case perfect. How perfect? He wanted to kill River's entire family in front of the police, openly and legitimately, and still make the police completely helpless against him. Jasmine Gan thought trinitrotoluene was powerful and embarked on a point of no return, which was really stupid. He often resented that Jasmine Gan didn't tell him anything and took all the responsibility alone. If she had let him know, he was sure he could have taken out her opponents one by one, done so cleanly that the police would never find clues to solve the case. However, Chastchen knew that Jasmine Gan would never tell him. He could only lament and resent. Today was a lucky day. After waiting for many days, he finally caught Jiang Xiaobing alone. When these 4 people passed by an internet cafe, the other 3 said they wanted to go online for a while. Jiang Xiaobing, having a computer at home, didn't join them and walked home alone, smoking a cigarette, swaggeringly. After passing a surveillance camera at an intersection, he entered a secluded small street along the river. At this time, due to it being winter, there were no pedestrians on the road. After walking 200 meters, just after passing behind a large tree by the roadside, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his neck, let out an instinctive shout, but within 10 seconds, before he could fully see the person in front of him, his head became dizzy, and he collapsed. Chastin thought to himself with a smile, "Done? Let that friend handle the rest." The next morning, Lily Wang, Jiang Xiaobing's mother, rushed to the police station and directly found Vincent Fan, the station chief, anxiously saying, "Vincent, my son is missing. I just went to the school and my son didn't go to class either." Vincent Fan knew her son was a little delinquent. If it weren't for River being his loyal subordinate in the past, he would have dealt with Jiang Xiaobing long ago. Now that River was dead, out of past friendship, he still comforted her. "There won't be anything wrong, don't worry. Your son probably went out to play, or maybe he went to a classmate's house to stay overnight and overslept. You should ask his classmates." Lily Wang said, "I also called his mobile phone, and it's turned off. And he didn't even go to class today.